The Patriots went on the road. We talked about in our preview show that they struggle in September, and we know that they're talent deficient at the wide receiver position. Julian Edelman will be back in week 5. We don't know when Josh Gordon is going to get activated for them. It could be in week 4. It could be in week 5. They're going to get 2 very good weapons back into that mix. They're going to go on their tear that they normally do and light teams up in October, November, and December. They always struggle, Eric. This isn't new. It's the whole on the Cincinnati thing. We've seen them take bad losses twice to the Chiefs that they've gotten pummeled. We've seen the Dolphins beat them before. We've seen them take bad losses. This is nothing new. And we've seen that former coaches, it wasn't that many years ago, Josh McDaniels, Bill Belichick came into Denver when McDaniels was playing him in their first matchup, and they pulled off the upset, that being the Broncos did, and McDaniels got the win over Belichick, and things went all to hell after that. So those wins really don't mean anything to me. I want to see this Patriots team with all their weapons in there before I make a judgment where everybody's now judging. It's the same thing. It's just clickbait. It's just the media selling something on a Monday. To me, Eric, what speaks volumes is what happened with the Vikings and Jaguars, because the Vikings clearly were looking ahead to Thursday Night Football versus the Rams, and they completely overlooked the Bills. And I don't think that's something that good teams do, or something that great teams do, I should say. Jacksonville, the exact same thing. They got a huge win last week. We talked about it on the show that was probably one of their biggest, it may be their biggest regular season win they ever had. And to do it at home and do it by double digits, they clearly came in and overlooked the Titans, who were starting Blaine Gabbert. And they just didn't look ready to play all game. They looked flat. Offensively, they were terrible. And Bortles goes from a guy that looks like an all-pro to a guy that looks like he should be bagging groceries. And I think that's what they're going to be. They run their mouths a lot. They're a mouthy unit, and they didn't back it up on Sunday. Not versus Tennessee. They should never lose that game at home versus a team with Mariota not even starting and certainly not even close to 100%. So to me, I want to see what the Vikings come out and do Thursday night against the Rams. Because, Eric, to me, that's going to tell me a lot about this team going forward. Because if they don't come out and play one heck of a game, then to me, it tells me that there might not be the team that we thought they were, or they've got a lot of work to do. Now, if they don't and they come out and they beat the Rams on Thursday night, then it tells me there's something with this coaching staff that they need to find a way to motivate this team. Because if you remember week 2, they went into Lambeau and they tied, Eric. So you would think that they would come out at home ready to just put it to the floorboard, get rid of Buffalo early, rest their guys, and get ready for Thursday. Instead, they came out and looked like they were not ready to play at all.
Yeah, that's a good point. Extremely disappointing from a Vikings standpoint that, an 0-2 team can come in there and control you like that. I honestly thought the tie was disappointing too. We talked at length about how the field goal kickers really ruined that game for the Vikings. The fact that they're going to look back now going into week 4 in a tough, very tough matchup on Thursday night, and they're going to say, wow, we're 1-1-1, and we legitimately should be 3-0. That way, if we lose to the Rams, we're only 3-1, not that big of a deal. Or if we beat the Rams, we're 4-0, and everyone's talking about us being the best team in the NFC. Now you go home kind of shell-shocked under your Viking helmet there. Your horns are limp a little bit. You're drooping because you're 1-1-1. And you're about to get smashed right in the mouth because this Rams team is no joke.
No, and having limp horns is never a good thing. But when they look at the standings and they see the Bears are currently leading the NFC North, they're probably even going to be a little bit more disappointed that they've missed an opportunity to really put Green Bay a few games in the rear with an injured Aaron Rodgers. Let's swing it over to those Packers, Eric, as they went into Washington and the Redskins put it on them, a 28-17 win for Washington. But I think the bigger story for this game, Eric, is with the Packers. We've seen Rodgers just basically playing right now on one leg. It looked like that was the Redskins' game plan, was to try to get after him, to force him to make runs. There was a few times he scrambled out, and you could tell by the end of a 10 or 12-yard run, he was basically just carrying his leg. He is not close to 100%. They've got a tie. Now they've got a loss. Should they be playing Rodgers at this point with the way his knee is, or is Kaiser so bad they're just going to ride it out with Rodgers? Or I should say they have to ride it out with Rodgers.
Oh, you said it a couple weeks ago that they must have absolutely no confidence in Deshaun Kaiser because you're putting your entire season at risk. If he agitates that injury, or maybe because he's sort of limping around and favoring that leg, if he then goes and tears an ACL and you're deeper into this season, when you tear an ACL in the mid to late season, You're giving up almost 9 to 10 months. You're getting yourself all the way in to preseason of the following year. If you're favoring that leg and you're running your risk at further injury, it tells me that you have absolutely no situation you're willing to accept at backup quarterback. So I don't know, Justin. I mean, this is a really odd situation, and I've got to believe that the loss and the tie is going to continue to make this snowball, because they can't afford to sit Rodgers when you're giving up losses and ties, because you're going to get too far behind. Thank you, Eric, for telling everybody that the Chicago Bears would be better than people thought. Now, look, I'm not going to get too high on them. They won 16-14 against Arizona, which we know is terrible, but they're 2-1. They're not 0-3. You can't keep kicking that can down the road, because you know the Vikings are going to win some games this year, right? You know Detroit's going to win some games. Chicago's going to win some more games. I don't think they want to mess around with Kaiser, but they're putting themselves in a dangerous spot. Look, I don't know his injury. I don't know how bad it is. Justin, this is every year now with Aaron Rodgers, and I know we got excited after week 1 with some of the great things that we saw, and we love having our stars on the field no matter what team they play for, but don't forget, it's all about the hype when you start getting these nagging injuries that kind of make you underperform and underachieve in your career.
Yeah, I think you summed it up pretty well. I mean, I just don't think they have an option. And obviously, if Rodgers, he talked about it after the game against Chicago, that he sat there behind Brett Favre, and Favre's a legend in Green Bay, and we know the toughness that he played with and the injuries he played through. And he's even come out and talked about the enormous amount of concussions that he hadn't played through. So Rodgers knows that. He knows the history of that organization. I'm sure he's going to try. If they're saying he can't injure it more, he's got the big brace on it. If they're not fearing a RG3 type situation where, remember, back in his rookie year, he gets the knee injury, he kind of hobbles around. They try to play in the playoff game, ends up tearing the ACL, and was never the same again for them. So Rodgers is obviously in a different position at this point in his career, and we know what he can do. But if they continue to lose games,
and that's horse crap too, because he might not be able to injure that knee more, but he can favor that knee and injure the other one.
Yeah, he could definitely overcompensate, and we've seen guys do that. Calves, quads, the other leg, those things are all potential out there where you go from maybe, okay, we need to set this guy down for 3 or 4 weeks, and then we'll just come back and see where things shake out, to you could lose him for the whole season, and then you've got Kaiser out there. So I definitely think, look, whatever we think that knee injury is.
Or Kaepernick.
Oh, dear God. Well, there's a lot of people that would like that, including Nike. But if Rodgers goes down and then he's out for the year, then you're stuck with Kaiser for what? 11, 12 plus games going forward. So that's why I think they have to be careful. They have to look at where their buy's at. Is there a chance that they could just sit Rodgers for a few weeks and hope to survive? You know, maybe win a game or two out of that stretch and not be completely out of the mix and have him come back healthier versus what he's doing? Because Eric, he looks worse every single week. And again, like you said, it's not just the injury or worsening of that knee. There's a lot of other things that can happen if he can't protect himself and he takes a shot to the head and gets a nasty concussion. There's a lot that's out there more than just, oh, he can't re-injure that knee any further. I think that's a dumb thing to continue to say, because whatever that injury is, however bad that it's being portrayed, it's probably worse than that, because that tends to be what happens. We talk about it all the time when seasons are over. Everybody then starts opening up about all this crazy stuff. And it's like, why do you get mad at people when they ask these questions through the year? It doesn't really make any sense to me.
Well, and all jokes aside, you know who the Packers should call is Matt Flynn. I mean, not Kaepernick, not anybody else. Call Matt Flynn, because the only team that Matt Flynn ever played really, really good for was the Green Bay Packers. So, and I know he's available, so call Matt Flynn.
If you were to give me 40 choices, I never would have guessed you would have said to call Matt Flynn.
That's why I'm your co-host, buddy, because I can come up with some really random crap that makes no sense.
I would have guessed your boy Chris Couch first.
Tim's brother?
Yeah, Tim's brother. Well, speaking of a team that might need Tim or Chris Couch, and that could be the Arizona Cardinals. Eric and I have had some fun talking about the Cardinals organization for 2 years now, but specifically about Sam Bradford. We had a prop bet that probably why we don't make lines in Vegas, because we made it way too easy. We thought, would Sam Bradford start over under 5 games for this team? Well, at least he made it 3. There was talk on Sunday of even some contract and monetary issues in play as well if Bradford was not the starter there and they put Rosen in. And Arizona played pretty well on Sunday early in that game, and then it all went to pot for them. They fell apart. Chicago came back. They threw Rosen in there late. He couldn't bring him back. Eric, now the Arizona Cardinals, they're struggling. I guess there's really no expectations for this team. So is this the best time now to unleash Josh Rosen?
I don't know what's a better time. Look, Sam Bradford was never going to be the answer. I know I'm very hard on Sam Bradford, partly because he's been, with the Eagles, and I just didn't think that he was really worth the money then. I don't think he's worth the money now. I don't think he's even was worth the money that the Rams paid him. This guy has made a ton of money for very little in performance. And so when they gave him a decent-sized contract and then still drafted Rosen, I thought, well, I mean, that's just a ticking time bomb because he's going to be on such a short leash. It's inevitable. I mean, the over-under set at 5 was a joke between us, but I felt pretty comfortable taking the under. You and I tweeted about it a couple times back and forth joking this week. And then when they pulled Bradford at the end of that game and put in Rosen, I thought, oh my gosh, like this is just a total show right now. And you know what I mean by the, chocolate ice cream emoji show. This Arizona team is crazy. David Johnson, I don't know how high he went in a lot of drafts, but not a lot of value coming out of David Johnson right now. They need to get him going more. Larry Fitzgerald is still probably the best player on that team, and yet he's 95 years old. Great leader, but
he talks about retirement.
Yeah, I mean, but he's always, 1 foot in retirement. I mean, so this team is just odd. I have no confidence in them. Yeah, I make fun of them, and it was just so predictable. That's really all I've got to say on this topic, Justin, is it was just so predictable.
Yeah, the only reason I ask is, and you hit on it there, just their lack of weapons. Yeah, you've got David Johnson, but really what else do you have on that team? That's part of the problem of what I was thinking of, just what else do they have? You're basically going to throw your quarterback out there, and you've got David Johnson, you've got a 15-year vet in Larry Fitzgerald, and then you're throwing some young guys out there in Kirk. You wonder if you don't hurt his confidence or hurt him for the future or get him beaten to death like they happened with David Carr years and years ago with the Texans. So those are some of the things I think about, but I don't think they have a choice. I think when they look at it, you've got to play the guy that's the best talent. I think that's Rosen. They haven't seen anything from Bradford. They're 0-3. They're terrible. They're fighting, we thought, with Buffalo for the worst team in the league. At least Buffalo came out and showed out in week 3. But that leads to another topic, Eric, of another young quarterback that got an opportunity. And we talked about Baker Mayfield. Were the Browns making the right move? Some of that was based, I think, our opinions on what we were hearing coming out on Tyrod or Ty or whatever the hell they call Tyrod Taylor now, that he was having this magnificent camp and he was needed to have all the first team snaps and there was no plans to play Baker Mayfield. And you started to look at this team. Josh Gordon was MIA during camp. You really had bringing Jarvis Landry in. They made some upgrades at the running back. But you started to say, okay, I can kind of buy into that if Tyrod can run this system better. He's a guy that can get out, move around, kind of compensate for maybe a line that's going to be coming together. But he was horrible. He looked awful. And Thursday night, he was abysmal. And we were texting back and forth. They got to pull this guy. He's not giving them any shot to win. And lo and behold, they bring Baker Mayfield in the game, and it looks like a completely different football team. He immediately gets them moving up and down the field. They were down 14-0. He brings them back. The Browns get their first win since Christmas Eve of 2016. And it's some crazy stat that it's been forever since they've actually won a game on a Sunday. That game was a Saturday. This game was a Thursday. So they'll have their chance against the 0-3 Raiders this Sunday, in which finally the Browns named Baker Mayfield the starter. I don't know what Hugh Jackson was waiting for. So when you look back at it now, Eric, were they correct to just go with Tyrod and ease Baker in, or would you have rather seen them just go with Baker right from the beginning?
Look, I know hindsight's 20/20, but based on what we saw in the latter half of that game, I mean, Baker Mayfield just played great. And I know I've hated on Mayfield. I didn't want the Jets to draft him. I was happy with the Darnold move, and I thought really a lot of that had to do with the fact that I didn't know what Mayfield would bring to the table, and I didn't know if his off-field stuff would ever enter in, if he would ever be a little bit of a loose cannon. It looks to me like this kid really wants to lead a team. I was extremely impressed with what he did in the second half of that game against my Jets, unfortunately, but he far outplayed Sam Darnold in that moment. You're going to have ups and downs like that when you have rookie QBs. I think Darnold is the right choice for my New York Jets long term, a stable presence, hopefully. I think Baker Mayfield might have actually been the right choice for the Browns, because if he can bring a fire and a winning attitude to that team, maybe that's what they needed. I'm going to go back to week 1 and say, had they actually pulled Tyrod with that first game against Pittsburgh, that they might